You've probably heard someone else say this already, but I absolutely love Palworld. While I do see the comparisons to other franchises like Pokemon and Ark, I think this game stands on its own 2 feet in terms of how it uses the mechanics of the games that inspired it. I don't think I've been this interested in a game since Fortnite came out way back in 2017, and I think the over 80 hours, probably close to 90 hours I've put into the game in the last 2 weeks speaks for itself. I'm only around level 40 with 2 of the bosses defeated, but as I gear up to hit the endgame content, I am so excited to see what this game and Pocket Pair as developers have in store in the future. Palworld deserves all the love it's receiving, and I'm so excited to be talking about this game that feels like it came out of nowhere. Palworld has absolutely taken over my life since I started playing it. I'm not sure if it's the PAL collection process or just the sense of progression that keeps fueling my addiction to this game. The next video that I wanted to post to this channel was going to be the games I played in January, followed up by my review of Jedi Survivor. You can see that's not the case. For some reason, Palworld gripped me so hard when I started playing it that I just couldn't put it down, so I feel like I should probably talk about that game first. I want to break down everything that makes this game special to me, as well as talk about some of the discourse among Pokemon fans when it comes to the mechanics and the PAL designs of this game. So, let's talk about Palworld and why I'm addicted to playing it. The gameplay loop of Palworld is almost intoxicating to me. Not only while I wrote this script, but while I'm currently recording this script, I have the game over on another monitor just passively mining some materials that I need for the endgame. I've been trying to plan out my bases and the best way to optimize my setups and the pals I'm using, and it's been this all-consuming activity for me. Honestly though, I've really been enjoying myself. The exploration and discovery in this game is something that I can only compare to the likes of Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, one of probably the best games I've ever played in my entire life. Not only is this game split up into 5 separate biomes, but it's also sectioned off into smaller areas that are inside of those biomes. In this game, we've got deserts, volcanoes, beaches, forests, marshes, snowy mountains, and they're all so large and expansive that they all feel like their own separate portions of a massive world. At its core though, Palworld is a survival game. While the pals you capture are an important component to this game's success, the game wouldn't be nearly as fun if the survival mechanics or the exploration were bad. In terms of the survival aspect of this game, there are really 2 meters that you have to be careful about when talking about your PAL companions. The most important meter for PALs is going to end up being your sanity meter. Most of the time though, if you can keep your pals full and not hungry, they won't get depressed, and that also includes keeping them from glitching out of walls when they're in your bases. And this game's in early access, so there's a lot of kind of things that happen, but I can let it slide because early access. Don't worry, we'll talk about the comparisons between this and Pokemon later. I just wanted to point that out now, that if there are glitches, then at least you know that this game is in early access and you can see that now. Oh, also make sure they have a hot tub. The pals like it a lot and it lets their sanity meter drop a lot slower, so you're gonna need one. For your player character, however, you are going to have to keep an eye on the temperatures, item degradation, having your base rated while you're there, leveling up not only yourself, but also your base, and so many other things on top of that. I know it sounds like a lot, but you'll get a hang of it eventually. I promise. I mean, coming from experience, during my first about 5 hours of this game, I was so lost. I had no idea what pals to use for what situations. I didn't know what resources I needed or how to get them. I didn't even know where to put my base to make a good base until I was at least 10 hours into the game. Once I unlocked my first flying mount though at level 15, everything changed for me. I was able to visit the first nature reserve and caught one of my favorite pals even up until now. It also gave me the opportunity to explore the map more with less restrictions. Nightwing may be pretty slow and have awful stamina, but unlocking the ability to move more freely opened up the entire world to me. Until I ended up going to a higher level area before I was supposed to, and died a lot because Nightwing is so slow. In my head, I split my time in this game up between 2 sections, but probably 3. I'm just not there at that point in the game yet to really make that assumption. Part 1 I would consider to be the low levels, basically levels 1 through 20. This is the portion of the game before you unlock breeding, and you also don't really have access to great gear yet. You don't really get a lot of guns at this point, you don't have great armor. You're really relying on your pals to do a lot of the legwork in terms of battling for you, because I think the best thing you have is a crossbow. This is also the point in the game where you're probably going to set up your first ore farm, unlock your second base, and just kind of make the most of what you have until you get to that level 19-20 mark and you can start breeding for better pals. I say this because at this point in the game you have pretty low level pals, and not in terms of their actual level compared to you, but because their attributes are so low level that they don't really get you a lot of resources until you can get the better pals. The next part of the game, which is where I am, is level 20 to about, I would say, 40 in terms of XP curve, because level 40 to 50 it's incredible. For me personally, this is where I leveled up the quickest. You see, in Palworld, you get a bonus for the first 10 pals you capture of each species. That also includes breeding them and getting the eggs. I didn't end up recording a lot of my breeding sessions because honestly they were pretty boring. I was focused on it for so long that there's probably a lot of my time spent in this game has just been spent breeding different pals. Not to mention that crossbreeding pals allowed me to unlock different creatures that I definitely shouldn't have had access to until way later in the game, like Astagon or Anubis. I would explain how breeding works, but there are definitely enough guides here on YouTube for you to go find one and not have to listen to me speak about it. Later, I really want to talk about my favorite pals, but for now I'm just excited that I was able to get some of these late game pals early on. Even if they didn't have things like their special skills, at least it gave me a way to optimize my base just that much better. And so the final stage in this game I would say is probably level 40 to 50. I haven't hit this point yet. I actually just hit level 40, but I'm looking towards kind of farming those endgame resources and getting ready to optimize my bases to better suit the endgame materials and things that I'm going to need, like different guns, ammo, and pal spears. I also can't wait to finally get my base up to level 20, because then I'll unlock 20 pals on each one of my bases, which will drastically improve how much I can do at each base. Speaking of leveling up, it is crucial in this game to level up your main character level, because that's how you unlock all the new technology items, as well as leveling your base using those technology items so you can add more locations and pals to your ever-growing army, like I just talked about by getting my base the whole way up to level 20. Once you get to the 40s though, let me just say the XP grind is insane. I mean, just level 49 to 50 is so much XP I don't even want to think about trying to get there. If you watched my Scarlet and Violet review, you would know that I'm a huge Pokemon fan. Also, if you haven't seen that video, you should probably go watch it right after you finish this one. Ever since I was a kid, building my Pokemon teams and crafting the best adventure I could with those Pokemon were always my favorite parts of the games. While I absolutely love Pokemon as a franchise, I don't think its monopoly over the creature-catching genre has been good for the franchise in the long run. There have been countless Pokemon killers over the years that have all come and gone that have tried to dethrone the giant of a franchise. One game I was heavily excited for but never ended up actually playing was one of these so-called killers, Temtem. Palworld, however, just feels like a different animal to me. I think it mostly has to do with the gameplay loop being so different from Pokemon, whereas games like Temtem and Nexomon kind of borrowed every aspect from Pokemon, like the turn-based battles, the really complex typing charts, and the all of the designs that go into making the Pokemon battles fun and interesting. I think Temtem and other games of that nature just borrowed far too much from it for me to really latch onto a brand new series. Palworld, however, takes elements from Pokemon for sure, like the catching mechanics and even the somewhat the elements of the different pals in the game. But it also has elements from Ark and Minecraft. I mean, it has the shooting and building mechanics of Fortnite with the way that you build your bases. And I mean, even Breath of the Wild in terms of how you get the towers and you explore the world with, and you have the glider and all of those things. But maybe only to a certain degree. Maybe just like a pinch of salt of Breath of the Wild on top of the Pokemon Ark Minecraft Fortnite steak. The craziest information, at least to me, that I saw floating around about this game was that the developers Pocket Pair switched from using Unity to Unreal Engine in the middle of the development. They learned how to use this brand new engine on the fly, and I think it's incredible considering even though it's in early access and has bugs and has issues, how just polished and fun the actual gameplay loop feels without it being too broken or too annoying. This game has taken the world by storm, and how regularly we're seeing updates being pushed out. I have high hopes for not only Palworld, but also Pocket Pair as well. But I'm not done yet. Before we end this video, we need to talk about the pals that inhabit this world. I think the world is called the Palapagos Islands. I'm not really sure though, so we'll have to look it up. I never expected a game to give me creature designs that I love as much as Pokemon, but here we are. While I wanted to actually say all of my favorite pals, there were just way too many, so I'll just talk about my current top 5 pals and flash some of my other favorites in the background as well so you can kind of see them. My favorite pals in the game right now, based purely on design, are definitely Grisbolt, Astagon, Masanda, and its Lux version. I'm going to put those in the same tier, Blazehowl Noct, and Hellzephyr. My favorite pals kind of shift around. I like different ones for different aspects. I like some on bases, and I like some in my party more. I like riding some more than I like riding others. Like, I really love riding around on Beacon, even though it has worse stamina and it's slower than something like Phalaris. I just like the design so much, it kind of makes me want to use the pal more. That's one of the cool things about this game too. There's this thing called the PAL Condenser that allows you to level up one specific PAL. So once you get the passive abilities that you want on a PAL, you can condense a bunch of the same PAL to make the one that you want in your party or on your base just that much stronger. While I think I could talk about all the pals at least somewhat in great detail in terms of design and how they function in the world, I just don't have that kind of time in this video, so I'm not sure if I'll ever come back and cover anything else in Palworld, but if I were to cover anything, it probably would end up being the pals and how much I like them. I know Pocket Pair has been catching a lot of flack for copying designs and what everyone is calling plagiarism, but at the end of the day, the pals have appealing designs just like Pokemon do, and that's what makes them so cool to collect and see interact with the world. Unlike Pokemon, pals also have different attributes that make them better or worse to use for specific tasks. These tasks include mining, lumbering, transporting, and a bunch of other things to help you with materials like kindling and watering. Giving each pal a responsibility, whether that be on your base or in your team, also gives me a reason to remember the names of each pal more quickly than in a game like Pokemon, since I'm using more than 1 to 6 at a given time. Considering each base has 20 pals and all of your bases do different things and you use them for different aspects of the game, you're going to be seeing different pals do different jobs, and you're going to be interacting with them a lot more than you would your Pokemon that sit in your PC and do nothing. Also, I know this might be sacrilege, but I would love it if some of these PAL designs made it into Pokemon somehow. You can't tell me a PAL like Blazamut or Astagon wouldn't look incredible as the next pseudo-legendary in Generation 10. Or something like Jormuntide wouldn't have made the most incredible 1000th Pokemon, a new play on Gyarados that actually was a dragon type, that maybe was fire type. Maybe Jormuntide Ignis could have been the 1000th Pokemon. I guess at the end of the day, all I want to say about the designs is that I know that it might look like a game that's popular is copying the most popular franchise in the entire world, but in reality, these designs are just really interesting, and as old-time Pokemon fans, or I'm just, at least for myself, I think it's incredible to run around and see these pals interact with the world, maybe hunt for a Lucky, go do an alpha battle, and then get to throw them in my base and see them interact and do jobs, and I just think it's really cool. Before I forget, I also want to tell you that I love the type chart in this game. As a Pokemon player, I do get confused from time to time, as the type chart kind of looks like a game of Battleship if you look at it the wrong way, but looking at the type chart for Palworld, it actually kind of makes sense at a first glance. I'm not sure what pals are going to get added in the future, or if we're going to see new types get added and maybe make the type chart look a little bit different. I'm kind of hoping it doesn't. I like the more dumbed down version of how it works, but if they do want to add another type, I think that would be okay, as long as they do it correctly. I've also got my fingers crossed that they finally released the 3 pals that were data mined. I don't remember all of their names or if they all had names, but Blazebolt looks incredible. I know it looks just like Luxray, but I love Luxray, so I don't really have a problem with that, even if you do. I know that talking about the PAL designs and how it affects the gaming industry and what's happening with the Game Freak and the Pokemon Company and how Palworld is going to get shut down or how they're going to get sued. I know that's kind of what everyone's been talking about, but honestly, I don't think any of that's going to happen. I don't think that Palworld's going to get taken down, and I honestly don't think that they plagiarized Pokemon either. Now, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and I'm not going to tell you that what you think about the designs in this game is wrong, but Palworld also isn't going to overhaul the way that the Pokemon games are made. I think the most we could see with the Pokemon franchise would be a side game that tests some of the mechanics that Palworld introduced, but for the most part, it would probably the only thing we would see in the main series game that Palworld is taking from Pokemon would be the catching mechanic from Legends Arceus, which everyone already wants back anyways. While I know Game Freak and Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft, everyone's looking at the success of Palworld and seeing how crazy it's doing in terms of numbers and concurrent players, and it'll probably affect the way that we see gaming over the next couple years, kind of like how Fortnite did way back when it came out. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to change Pokemon or make Game Freak change the way they're making the next games, because I just don't think that's the case. I think what really needs to be talked about with this game is the fact that it's in early access and it's so incredibly fun to play, even with some of the bugs and the issues that it has. I've been hearing a lot of people talk about, oh, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet might have issues, but Palworld isn't better because it still has X, Y, and Z problems, yada, yada, yada. Whereas we have Game Freak, a company that has so much money, versus Pocket Pair, a company that put the rest of its money into Palworld, and if it didn't succeed was going to have to close. When you stack those two things up against each other and then you look at the game that I paid $60 for and how it runs versus a game that I paid $30 for, and I paid that $30 because I wanted to support this developer because I thought they were making something cool. Pokemon has been running off nostalgia for years, and while I love that game franchise, I succumb to nostalgia every single time they release a game. Palworld, however, is doing something new. It's innovating the creature catching genre, but without taking too much of the limelight away from Pokemon. I mean, the gameplay and the way that the games work are completely different. I mean, the only through line that I could find were the designs, the fact that it's creature catching, and the fact that you throw balls to catch things in one Pokemon game and in Palworld. So I think the fact that this game has come out and been stable and it's been super fun and it's garnered this much success is something that we should celebrate in the gaming industry. I think this game is a blast, and I know a bunch of my friends think that as well. I mean, we've been on a server together, we've all been playing. There's like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of us all playing together at the same time. It's been a blast, and I don't think Pokemon will ever come close to creating something that makes us all come together and play like this, but I also think that's okay. I think we live in a world where Pokemon and Palworld can live in the same space, and I think that everyone's going to have to learn and grow and be okay with that, because eventually people are going to have to start talking about Palworld like it's this big knockoff of Pokemon, when honestly it's more of a knockoff of Ark. Okay, well, that's a lot. I know I did a lot of talking on the game industry of itself and how I think that Pokemon isn't going to change, but maybe we'll see some slight variations in the future, at least not with the whatever's coming out this year, 2024. Palworld is not going to change that, but maybe 2025, 2026, we might see something different, or we might see another company come and try and do something similar to Palworld, but who knows when that's actually going to happen. Like I said earlier as well, I have a couple of things in the works, and if you're still here watching the video, one, thank you. Two, thank you guys so much for the support on the first video. I didn't expect my video of Scarlet and Violet, which is over a year old, to do so well, and I just want to say thank you for watching that video. Make sure you're hitting the sub button here, make sure you're hitting the like button and all the fun stuff, just because it lets me know that you like the videos and that you're liking the content and that you're excited for what's coming out next, which I'm going to talk about right now. So I have a slew of video games that I've played over the last couple of months that I'm kind of working through and making my reviews for, and while Palworld wasn't necessarily going to be on that list, I wanted to capitalize on people being interested in it so I could get my thoughts out on the table and maybe try and reach a bigger audience. And it was a game I liked anyway, so I figured this would be a great place to start with maybe a newer video. Now, what I'm going to be working on next is going to be a games I played in January. Now, I wanted to put that video out at the time that this one is coming out, but that just didn't work with logistics of me wanting to make a Palworld video. So every month I'm going to be making a video based on the games that I played the month previous. So this month you'll see a video of me playing things like God of War Ragnarok, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, Palworld, Kena Bridge of Spirits, Marvel Spider-Man 2. I mean, there's a lot of games that I'm going to be talking about in that video, and it's going to be this kind of amalgamation of all these games I've played, because I don't know when I'm going to talk about these games or if I'm going to do full-length reviews of all of them, but it'll at least give me a chance to talk about all the games I'm playing in a smaller form factor, which will end up being like a half-an-hour long video, but at least I'll have a chance to speak about some of those games that I might never see the light of day, or I might not see the light of day for a long time. After my games I played in January video comes out, I'm going to release a full-length review of Jedi Survivor. Now, I played Jedi Survivor a few months ago, so it has been a little while since I played it, but I did take notes while I was playing the game, and I've been kind of jumping back in and testing some stuff out and playing a little bit more, and I'm super excited to share my thoughts on that game, especially because I got to play it after a lot of the patches, so I didn't have to worry about day one issues and things like that. So if you're excited for that, and for me to kind of branch away from Pokemon and creature catching, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you're hitting that sub button, because it's going to be a lot of fun. I've been working on that video in the background. I've been working on this one and the other one, so I'm hoping that I can have that out sometime. If not at the end of this month, it'll definitely be up at the beginning of March, so make sure that you are hitting that like button, make sure you're hitting the sub button. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you didn't already, make sure you're checking out any of my friends, make sure you're checking out my other channels. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.